Welcome dear students to the second part of our chapter, Energy Flow in an Ecosystem. In the last video, we already discussed about the food chain, the food web, the flow of energy is unidirectional, the nutritional flow is cyclic. All this thing was covered in the first part. Now we'll continue further where we'll be looking at the different cycles, the different BCG cycles which are there in nature. BIO-GEO cycles, BIO-GEO-chemical cycles. Okay, what do you understand by this? These cycles are made up of three different parts, which is your biological part, your biosphere, all the things which are present in the biosphere, your living things as well as the non-living things, which can include the animals, the birds, the fishes, the human beings, the plants, everything. Okay, all this comes under biosphere. Then you have the geosphere, which looks at the non-living parts of the environment, which includes your atmosphere, your land, your the cryosphere, then the hydrosphere, which is the water, all the non-living aspect of the environment. And finally you have the sun, which is your solar energy. Okay, when you have a combination of all these three, that is your solar energy, your geosphere and your biosphere, this gives rise to a constant interaction with each other. Because of this, there is a constant flow of energy and nutrition. Okay, so this gives rise to certain cycles. These cycles are called as the bio-geochemical cycles, or in short the BGC cycles. Now your types of bio-geochemical cycles, you've got two types of BGC cycles. The first one are the gaseous cycles, where you are talking about gases, and the second one are the sedimentary cycles, where you're talking about actual solid substances. Okay, now out of this we will be covering the gaseous cycle in your 9th standard portion. Sedimentary cycles will not be touched, but right now we just have to look and understand the difference between gaseous cycles and sedimentary cycles. Now gaseous cycles, the cycles in which the reservoir is in the atmosphere or the hydrosphere, and these are termed as the gaseous cycle. Over here the reservoir, the place from which the energy is given, is either in the atmosphere, in the air, or in the hydrosphere, or in the water. The main pool of nutrients possessing gaseous cycle are the atmosphere and the ocean. So the nutrition is basically brought into the environment from either the atmosphere or from the oceans, that is the hydrosphere. Gaseous cycles circulate many basic elements of life such as oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen and hydrogen. So because of these gases, because of these particular cycles, there are a various number of gases which are present in the environment, like your carbon dioxide, your nitrogen, your hydrogen, your oxygen. All these different types of substances, all these different types of gases are present in our environment because of these gaseous cycles. Now let us have a quick look at sedimentary cycles. The cycles in which the reservoir is in the earth's crust are called as sedimentary cycles. Now as I said, sedimentary cycle has got to do something with solids. So your solids cannot be present in the air or in the water. It can only be present on the earth, that is in the lithosphere. So sedimentary cycle, the place from which we are obtaining the nutrition and the energy is present in the earth's crust, either on the surface of the earth or deep inside the earth. The main reservoirs of sedimentary cycles are the rocks of the earth's crust. Whatever rocks are present on the earth, these are basically the main constituents or the main reservoirs for the sedimentary cycles. Sedimentary cycles circulate elements like sulfur, phosphorus and calcium. Because of sedimentary cycles, we have different substances which are present in the crust of the earth, which are very important, like sulfur, phosphorus, calcium. Okay, all these things are present inside the crust of the earth. The first cycle that we will be looking at is the carbon cycle. Now, how exactly is carbon present in the air, and what exactly is the use of carbon and how is it converted into something else. Okay, so the plant is present. Okay, what does the plant do? The plant is able to prepare its own food by the process of photosynthesis. This is something that you have been learning right from 5th standard. So your plant pulls in the carbon dioxide from the air along with the sunlight and along with the water from the soil. It converts that into oxygen. Okay, and that oxygen is released. The animals, the human beings, the plants, the different types of living organisms on the earth, they absorb that oxygen and they are able to do their different life processes with the help of oxygen. Now, these animals, when they die, the plants, when they die, they are also having carbon. There is carbon in the body of plants as well as in the animals. This form fossils. The bones which are found deep inside the earth, okay, they are fossils. So what is present in those fossils? There is carbon which is present. Now that carbon is after many years, you have that carbon getting converted into coal, and that coal is being used by industries for different processes. And there is when these industries and factories use coal for burning processes, there is a lot of smoke which is generated. What is present in that smoke? You have carbon monoxide, you have carbon dioxide. So that thing again is sent out into the atmosphere. Okay, so what is happening? The carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is taken by the plants. The plants give out oxygen, the plant dies, it forms carbon. This carbon is utilized by the industries. The industries then give out smoke which contains carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, which again goes back into the atmosphere. If you see over here, the plants give out oxygen. The oxygen is used by the living organisms for respiration, and after respiration the living organism also gives out carbon dioxide. So that carbon dioxide also gets released into the air. So there is a continuous cycle which is taking place over here, and this cycle is called as your carbon cycle. Now, what are the main things which are happening in the carbon cycle? The two main things which are happening in the carbon cycle is photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Okay, these are the two equations which are for photosynthesis and cellular respiration. It's given in your textbook as well, where you have carbon dioxide and water coming together and forming glucose C6H12O6, and oxygen is released into the air. And in respiration, what happens is that your glucose is combining with oxygen, and then there is carbon dioxide which is released, water is released, and energy is also released. Okay, so these two are your basic chemical reactions which take place in the carbon cycle, that is photosynthesis and cellular respiration. The next cycle that we have is called as the oxygen cycle. It's a very simple, straightforward kind of a cycle. If you see, again you have the plants. The plants give out oxygen. The plants during the process of photosynthesis, they release oxygen. This oxygen is used by the living organisms like animals, human beings, birds. They use the oxygen for breathing, and then they give out carbon dioxide. And what happens to the carbon dioxide? This carbon dioxide is absorbed by the plants for the process of photosynthesis. So what is happening is that the plant is releasing oxygen, the oxygen is taken up by the living organisms, and carbon dioxide is given out. The carbon dioxide is again absorbed by the plants for the process of photosynthesis. So again we see a continuous cycle which is taking place, and this simple cycle is your oxygen cycle. Now if you look at microorganisms, your microorganisms can be categorized as aerobic microbes or anaerobic microbes. That is because the microorganisms which require oxygen for survival, they cannot live without oxygen. They require oxygen for survival. They are called as aerobic microbes or aerobes. The microorganisms which do not require oxygen, they can survive even without oxygen. They are called as anaerobic microbes or anaerobes. Your oxygen is containing two atoms of oxygen, okay? An oxygen molecule, when we write oxygen in short, we write it as O2. That O2 means there are two atoms of oxygen present in one molecule of oxygen, okay? Now we have something called as a ozone layer, which is protecting the earth, okay? This ozone layer, a ozone molecule is made up of three atoms of oxygen, 1, 2, 3. So 3 atoms of oxygen makes one molecule of ozone. What is the importance of ozone? The ozone forms a protective cover around the earth so that the harmful ultraviolet rays of the sun does not reach the earth, okay? The harmful ultraviolet rays of the sun, some of the rays of the sun contains ultraviolet radiations, which is very bad for the humans. The skin can, for not only humans, for animals as well, the skin can get burnt, you can get skin cancer because of this radiation. So what is the ozone layer doing? It forms like a protection around the earth and does not allow those harmful rays to reach the earth. The last cycle that we are going to learn about is the nitrogen cycle, okay? What happens, you know that when we draw the pie chart of the different constituents of air, we write it as 21% of oxygen, 78% of nitrogen, and then 0.3% of carbon dioxide, okay? So this is how we make a pie chart. So that 78% belongs to nitrogen. But this nitrogen, can we directly use it? Nitrogen is required by living organisms, but can we directly use the nitrogen from the air? The oxygen from the air we can use. We use it for the process of breathing. But this nitrogen, can we breathe in the nitrogen? Can we directly absorb that nitrogen? No, we cannot do that. There is a little different process for absorbing the nitrogen, okay? What happens is that the nitrogen which is present in the air, during the rainy season, when lightning takes place, when you have lightning taking place, the nitrogen in the air, there is a chemical reaction which takes place between the water and the nitrogen in the air during the lightning, and that nitrogen gets mixed up with that water and comes into the soil. It gets absorbed by the soil. Now in the soil you have certain organisms which love nitrogen. They are called as your nitrogen fixing bacteria. These bacteria, you can say, they love nitrogen. So what they do is that they absorb the nitrogen from the soil and convert it into different compounds. They convert it into NH4, NO2. NH4 is ammonia, NO2 is nitrogen dioxide, okay? This nitrogen dioxide is then, you have another type of bacteria which is called as nitrifying bacteria. You also have ammonia, you also have another type of compound of nitrogen over here, NH3. So all these three things, they are, there is a bacteria which is called as a nitrifying bacteria. They absorb all these compounds and convert it into another compound which is called as your NO3. This process is called as nitrification. This nitrified nitrogen is then absorbed by the roots of plants, okay, and the plants, it gets pulled up by the plant and it is transported to different parts of the plants, and it is also transported to the fruits, and when we eat those fruits is containing the NO3, okay. So in this way we obtain the nitrogen in the form of food. Then you also have something called as denitrification bacteria, wherein this denitrification bacteria acts on this NO3 and converts it back into nitrogen, which is released into the air, okay. So this particular cycle is known as your nitrogen cycle. Now this brings us to the end of this particular chapter. You will write down the exercise for this particular chapter and keep it ready. During our next lecture, we'll be having a Zoom meet, and after that I will send you notes. If you have any queries, please write it down and we will discuss it during the meeting. Okay, so till we meet again, children, stay safe and stay happy. Bye.